Sarah's feet ached as she moved between tables at the Golden Fork restaurant. 6 hours into her double shift, her smile had become forced. The fancy place with its crystal chandeliers and grand piano in the corner was packed tonight, and her head pounded with each new order. "Table 7 wants more bread," called out her co-worker. Sarah nodded, grabbing a basket and weaving through the maze of tables. Her uniform, once crisp white and black, now had a small coffee stain near the pocket. She'd tried to scrub it out in the bathroom earlier, but it refused to budge, just like her life lately. As she served the bread, her manager, Pete, appeared beside her with a frown. "That's the second time tonight you've mixed up orders. The couple at table 12 got fish instead of steak." "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, pushing a strand of brown hair behind her ear. "Won't happen again." "It better not," Pete said, his voice low. "We can't afford mistakes like that. One more slip-up and we'll need to talk about your position here." Sarah's stomach tightened. She couldn't lose this job. Not with rent due next week and her student loans piling up. When her shift finally ended at midnight, Sarah trudged up the stairs to her tiny apartment. She flipped on the light, revealing a space that looked like it belonged to two different people. Half was practical, a worn couch, small kitchen table, bills stacked in neat piles. The other half told a different story. Sheet music scattered across the floor. A keyboard pushed into the corner, a thin layer of dust covering its keys. Old competition trophies lined a shelf, their gold paint chipping. Sarah dropped her bag and collapsed onto the couch, not bothering to change out of her uniform. Her fingers moved unconsciously, playing invisible keys on her thigh, a habit she couldn't break. 3 years since she properly played. 3 years trying to forget music completely. But her hands, they remembered. She glanced at the keyboard, then quickly looked away. Some wounds were still too raw to touch. Instead, she set her alarm for her morning shift and closed her eyes, humming softly to herself until sleep came. Little did she know that tomorrow, her carefully constructed wall between past and present would come crashing down. A demanding customer would force her back to the keys, and the talent she'd been hiding would finally break free, changing everything in ways she never imagined. In the darkness of her apartment, the sheet music rustled slightly in the breeze from an open window. The keyboard waited, patient and silent, for fingers that once made it sing. The next evening, Sarah arrived at the Golden Fork to find the place buzzing with activity. A large reserved sign stood at the entrance to the private dining section. "Big shot businessman tonight," Pete told her, adjusting his tie. "Robert Thompson. He's bringing some important clients. They've booked the entire back room." Sarah nodded, tying her apron. "Who's serving them?" "You are," Pete said. "Lisa called in sick. Don't mess this up. Thompson's a regular and spends big money here." Her heart sank. Just what she needed, more pressure. The private room gradually filled with men in expensive suits. At the head of the table sat Robert Thompson, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and cold eyes that seemed to evaluate everything in terms of dollars and cents. "Where's the piano player?" he demanded when Sarah approached with water. "I specifically requested live music." Pete appeared instantly. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Thompson. Carlos called in sick at the last minute. We couldn't find a replacement." Thompson's face darkened. "This dinner is important. I promised my clients the full experience." "We can play recorded classical music," Pete began. "That's not the same," Thompson snapped. Sarah tried to make herself invisible as she poured water. She accidentally clinked a glass too loudly, drawing Thompson's attention. His eyes narrowed, watching her hands as she served. When she began humming softly, a nervous habit, his expression changed. "You," he said suddenly. "You play, don't you?" Sarah froze. "Excuse me." "The piano. You play. I can tell by your hands and the way you were just humming Debussy." Sarah's face flushed. "No, I don't really." "She doesn't play, Mr. Thompson," Pete interrupted. "Yes, she does," Thompson insisted. "Look at her finger positioning even when holding that picture. Those are a pianist's hands." The entire table was watching now. Sarah felt trapped. "I used to play," she admitted, "but I haven't in years." Thompson's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perfect. Problem solved." "Sir, I really can't." "I'm spending $4,000 here tonight," Thompson said, his voice dropping dangerously low. I don't think it's too much to ask for some live music as promised. Pete shot Sarah a desperate look. She knew what it meant. Her job was on the line. Just one song, Thompson pressed. Unless you'd prefer, I speak to the owner about the quality of service here. Time seemed to stop. Sarah looked at the grand piano in the corner, its polished surface gleaming under the lights. Her palms began to sweat. The thought of touching those keys again made her chest tighten. One song, she finally whispered. As she walked toward the instrument, memories flooded back. Her mother saving for years to buy their second-hand upright. The competitions. The scholarship offer. Then the accident that changed everything. She sat on the bench, her uniform feeling suddenly tight. The dining room had grown quiet. Everyone was watching, the kitchen staff peering through the door, diners pausing mid-bite, Thompson with that smug look of victory. Sarah lifted her hands, holding them above the keys. They were shaking badly. For 3 years, she'd locked away this part of herself. Now this stranger was forcing her to confront it all again. Anger mixed with fear as her fingertips hovered over the ivory keys. She took a deep breath and pressed down gently. The first note rang out clear and true, hanging in the air like a question. Something inside her stirred, something she'd tried so hard to bury. Her fingers remembered what her mind wanted to forget. No one in the restaurant could have possibly imagined what was about to happen next. That single note hung in the air, suspended like a memory Sarah couldn't quite grasp. Her fingers trembled above the keys as the past rushed back to her in waves. Sarah was 12 again, sitting at the old upright piano in her parents' living room. Her mother stood behind her, gently correcting her posture. Shoulders back, honey. Let your fingers dance on the keys, not pound them. She was 16, playing her first major competition. The spotlight hot on her face, sweat beading on her forehead as she poured her heart into Chopin's Ballade No. 1. She was 19, opening the letter from the prestigious music academy, her hands shaking with excitement. Full scholarship, she had whispered to her mother on the phone. Mom, I made it. Then she was 24, sitting in a hospital waiting room, still wearing her black concert dress. The doctor's face grave as he delivered the news about her mother's heart attack. We did everything we could. The piano had been sold to pay medical bills. The scholarship deferred, then abandoned. Music, once her joy, became too painful, every note a reminder of what she'd lost. Now, 3 years later, this arrogant businessman was forcing her back. Sarah took a deep breath. The dining room had gone completely silent. Everyone was waiting. She placed her hands properly on the keys, muscle memory taking over. She began with something simple, a basic melody, slow and careful. Her fingers felt stiff, like they belonged to someone else. See? I was right, Thompson said smugly to his guests. Always trust my instincts about people. Something flickered inside her, a spark of defiance. This man thought he could command her talent like he ordered food. That he could expose what she kept buried just to entertain his clients. Without thinking, Sarah's hands moved to a different position. She began to play Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, a piece so demanding and emotional it had once been her signature performance. The first thunderous chords silenced Thompson mid-sentence. The speed and intensity seemed impossible from the same woman who'd been meekly pouring water moments before. Her fingers flew across the keys, finding notes she'd thought forgotten. The music poured out of her, all the grief, anger, and loss she'd locked away. Each note clearer and more powerful than the last. The restaurant disappeared. The watching eyes faded away. There was only Sarah and the music, reunited after years apart. In her mind, she was playing for her mother one last time. She didn't see the chef step out from the kitchen, wooden spoon still in hand. Didn't notice the couple at table 9 holding hands, tears in their eyes. Didn't register Pete standing open-mouthed by the bar. Most importantly, she didn't see the older woman at the corner table leaning forward, intense concentration on her face. The woman who had been eating alone with a stack of music programs beside her plate. The woman whose name anyone in classical music circles would instantly recognize. As Sarah reached the powerful climax of the piece, one of Thompson's guests whispered, "My God, who is she?" Thompson said nothing, his earlier smugness replaced by genuine awe. When the final note faded, Sarah remained still, eyes closed, breathing hard. The silence that followed was complete. Then someone dropped a fork, the clatter breaking the spell. The room erupted in applause. People stood from their tables. Someone whistled. The noise startled Sarah back to reality. She was still a waitress in uniform, sitting at the restaurant's piano. Her face burned as she quickly stood, nearly knocking over the bench. She smoothed her apron with shaking hands. "I should get back to work," she mumbled, not meeting anyone's eyes. But as she tried to return to her duties, her path was blocked by Thompson, now standing with a completely different expression on his face. "Wait," he said, his voice softer than before. "Please wait." That was. But Sarah pushed past him, heading straight for the kitchen, desperate to escape the stares and the emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. She didn't know it yet, but her life had just changed forever. Sarah pushed through the kitchen doors, her heart hammering in her chest. She leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath as kitchen staff stared at her with new eyes. "Was that really you playing?" asked the dishwasher, a young guy who'd barely spoken 2 words to her before. "I need a minute," Sarah whispered, slipping past him to the small employee bathroom. She locked the door behind her and stared at her reflection. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright in a way they hadn't been for years. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Playing again had felt like ripping open an old wound, painful but somehow cleansing too. She splashed cold water on her face, trying to compose herself. A soft knock came at the door. "Sarah?" It was Pete's voice. "You need to come out. People are asking about you." "I can't," she said through the door. "I can't face them right now." "Thompson wants to speak with you. And there's someone else." "Listen, just come out, okay? This could be important." Sarah dried her face and took a deep breath. She couldn't hide in here forever. When she emerged, Pete guided her back toward the dining room. "What you did out there, I had no idea. Why didn't you ever say anything?" Sarah shrugged. "It's not who I am anymore." "Well, it sure looked like who you are to everyone watching." The dining room had returned to its normal buzz, but heads turned as she entered. Thompson stood near the piano, talking intently with an elderly woman in an elegant blue dress. When he spotted Sarah, he waved her over. "There she is," he said, his earlier demanding tone replaced with something like respect. "This is who I was telling you about." The older woman turned, studying Sarah with piercing blue eyes. "That was quite a performance, young lady. Rachmaninoff is not for amateurs." "This is Dr. Eleanor Wilson," Thompson explained. "She's the head of the music department at Westlake Conservatory." Sarah's breath caught. Everyone in classical music knew Dr. Wilson's reputation. She'd trained some of the most celebrated pianists of the last 30 years. "You play with remarkable emotion," Dr. Wilson continued. "Your technique needs refinement, understandable after years without practice, but your natural talent is undeniable." Sarah stared at the floor. "Thank you, but I don't play anymore. Tonight was an exception." "A forced exception," Thompson admitted, looking somewhat embarrassed. "I owe you an apology for putting you on the spot like that." Dr. Wilson raised an eyebrow. "You mean this wasn't planned? She hasn't played in years." 3 years, Sarah said quietly. "Even more impressive," Dr. Wilson murmured. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "The conservatory has a special program for adult students with exceptional ability. Full scholarships available. I'd like you to consider it." Sarah stared at the card but didn't take it. "I can't." "I'm sorry." Dr. Wilson placed the card on the piano. "Music like yours doesn't come along often. Think about it." As the older woman walked away, Thompson cleared his throat. "My clients were blown away. So was I. What would it take to hire you to play regularly? Name your price." Sarah shook her head. "I'm just a waitress here." "Not anymore, you're not," Pete interjected. "Not if I have anything to say about it." A young couple approached, the woman clutching her phone. "I hope you don't mind, but I recorded some of your performance. It's already got hundreds of views online." Sarah felt the room spinning. Too much too fast. "Excuse me," she mumbled, pushing past them all. She grabbed her coat and purse from the staff room and slipped out the back door without telling anyone. The cold night air hit her face as she hurried down the street, confusion swirling in her mind. Back in her apartment, she paced the small living room, unable to settle. Her fingers kept moving, playing invisible keys. The music had awakened something she'd tried so hard to bury. Sarah finally stopped in front of the dusty keyboard. With trembling hands, she wiped it clean and plugged it in. The weight of the keys felt different from the grand piano at the restaurant, but familiar all the same. She began to play softly, a simple melody her mother had taught her first. Tears rolled down her face, but she didn't stop. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from coworkers and calls from numbers she didn't recognize. The outside world was already responding to her unexpected performance, but Sarah was in her own world now. For the first time in 3 years, she was playing just for herself, and it felt like coming home. Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through her blinds and the sound of her phone buzzing insistently. She'd fallen asleep at her keyboard, her neck stiff from the awkward position. The digital clock showed 10:47 a.m. She'd slept through her morning shift. "Oh no," she groaned, grabbing her phone. 15 missed calls, dozens of text messages, and notifications from social media accounts she barely used anymore. The first voicemail was from Pete. "Sarah, where are you? Call me back. It's important." The second made her sit up straight. "This is Dr. Wilson from Westlake Conservatory. I left my card with you last night. Please call me at your earliest convenience." The next 3 were from numbers she didn't recognize. Journalists wanting interviews. Sarah scrolled through her texts with growing disbelief. Coworkers had sent links to videos of her performance. One had over 50,000 views already, with comments pouring in from around the world. Incredible talent hiding in plain sight. Who is this waitress? She plays like a concert pianist. Someone get this woman on a proper stage. She clicked on one video and watched herself playing, not recognizing the woman whose face transformed with every note. Was that really her? Her doorbell rang, startling her. Sarah never had visitors. She peered through the peephole to see Pete standing in the hallway, shifting nervously. "I know you're in there," he called. "Your neighbor said you came home last night." Sarah reluctantly opened the door. "I'm sorry about missing my shift. I just—" "Forget about your shift," Pete interrupted, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "The restaurant's phone has been ringing nonstop. 3 different TV stations called. The owner flew back from his vacation early." Sarah sank onto her couch. "This is crazy. All because I played one song. 3 songs, actually. You were in some kind of trance." Pete glanced around the apartment, his eyes widening at the music awards and certificates half hidden under papers. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone you were this big-deal pianist?" "Because I'm not anymore." Sarah rubbed her temples. "What happens now?" "Now? The owner wants to offer you a position as our house pianist. Better pay, flexible schedule. He's thinking of renaming the back room after you." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Look at your phone. Look at what's happening. You're going viral, Sarah." A text notification appeared from Thompson. "Need to speak with you. Important opportunity. Please call." Pete nodded at her phone. "The rich guy hasn't stopped talking about you. Says he's got connections in the music world." Sarah stood and walked to her keyboard, running her fingers along the keys without pressing down. "I gave it up for a reason," she said quietly. "Your mom?" Pete asked gently. Sarah turned, surprised. "How did you?" "You mentioned it once, during a late shift. Said she was the one who taught you to love music." Sarah hadn't realized she'd shared even that much. "After she died, playing felt impossible. Every note reminded me of her. And last night." "Last night," Sarah paused, remembering the feeling that had washed over her at the piano. Last night was the first time playing felt like honoring her memory instead of drowning in it. Pete smiled. "Then maybe it's time." Another text came through, a former classmate who'd recognized her in the video. "Oh, Sarah, is that really you? Everyone from conservatory is talking about this." As she stared at her phone, an email notification appeared. The subject line read, "Invitation to perform, City Symphony Charity Gala." The walls of the small apartment suddenly felt too close, too confining for the possibilities opening up before her. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "That performance last night says otherwise." Pete headed for the door. "The owner wants to meet you tomorrow at 2. Think about the offer." After he left, Sarah sat at her keyboard again, this time turning it on. She placed her fingers on the keys, hesitating only briefly before beginning to play. This time she played her mother's favorite piece, Debussy's Clair de Lune. As the delicate notes filled her apartment, Sarah closed her eyes. For the first time in years, the music brought comfort instead of pain. Her phone continued to buzz with messages from a world suddenly eager to hear what she could do. But for now, Sarah played only for herself and for her mother's memory. Tomorrow would be time enough to decide what came next. 2 days after her impromptu performance, Sarah sat nervously in the lobby of Westlake Conservatory. The building's grand architecture made her feel small. Towering columns, walls lined with portraits of famous musicians, and the distant sound of students practicing in far-off rooms. She barely slept since that night at the restaurant. Everything was happening so fast. The restaurant owner had offered her a position as their featured pianist with triple her waitress salary. Thompson had called twice, insisting he wanted to help launch her career. And Dr. Wilson had personally emailed, requesting this meeting. Sarah smoothed her skirt, the nicest one she owned, but still clearly not expensive. She'd polished her only pair of dress shoes and borrowed a blouse from her neighbor. Still, she felt out of place among the well-dressed students passing through the lobby. "She'll see you now," said the receptionist, pointing toward a heavy wooden door. Dr. Wilson's office was exactly what Sarah had expected, walls filled with books about music theory, framed concert programs, and a baby grand piano by the window. The elderly woman sat behind a large desk, reading glasses perched on her nose. "Please, sit down," Dr. Wilson said, removing her glasses. "I've been watching your video. Over 500,000 views now, I believe." Sarah nodded uncomfortably. It's all happened so quickly. Talent like yours doesn't stay hidden long once people get a glimpse of it. Dr. Wilson leaned forward. "Why did you stop playing? Your technique suggests years of serious training." Sarah stared at her hands. "My mother died. She was everything to me, my teacher, my biggest supporter. Playing without her felt wrong." "I see." Dr. Wilson's voice softened. "And now?" "Now I don't know." Sarah looked up. "That night at the restaurant was the first time I've really played in years. It just happened." "That businessman, Thompson, forced your hand, I understand." "Yes." Dr. Wilson smiled slightly. "Sometimes we need a push, even if it comes from an unexpected source." She stood and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a folder. "I've done some research. You were accepted to the Callaway Institute at 19 with a full scholarship." Sarah's eyes widened. "How did you?" "I have connections," Dr. Wilson said simply. "You never enrolled. Instead, you disappeared from the music world entirely." "My mother's medical bills," Sarah began. "I understand. Life happens." Dr. Wilson returned to her desk. "But now you have a second chance. I'm prepared to offer you a place in our advanced adult program. Full scholarship, private instruction with me, performance opportunities." Sarah's heart raced. "That's incredibly generous, but I don't know if I can." "Can't or won't?" Dr. Wilson interrupted, her voice sharp. "I've taught for 40 years. I know genuine talent when I hear it. Yours is exceptional, but talent without work is worthless." Sarah felt tears forming. "I'm afraid." "Of what? Failure? Success?" "Of losing her again," Sarah whispered. "Music was our connection. What if I can't do it justice?" Dr. Wilson's expression softened. She walked to the piano and opened the lid. "Come here." Sarah hesitantly joined her. "Play something your mother taught you," Dr. Wilson instructed. "I don't think I can." "Try." Sarah sat at the bench, feeling the weight of the moment. She began playing a simple piece her mother had composed, a lullaby written specially for her when she was small. As she played, memories flooded back, her mother's hands guiding hers, their laughter when she hit wrong notes, the pride in her mother's eyes at her first recital. "What do you feel?" Dr. Wilson asked softly. "I feel her," Sarah replied, continuing to play. "Like she's here with me." "Because she is. In every note you play, she lives on." Dr. Wilson placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You honor her by using the gift she helped nurture." The simple melody filled the office, bringing both pain and healing. "Thompson called me," Dr. Wilson said as Sarah finished. He wants to fund a scholarship in your name for talented students who face financial hardship. Seems you made quite an impression." Sarah looked up in surprise. "The same man who forced me to play." "People can surprise you." Dr. Wilson smiled. "The application deadline for our program is tomorrow. I hope you'll consider it." As Sarah left the conservatory, her phone buzzed with another call from Thompson. This time she answered. "We need to talk," she said firmly. "About that scholarship idea." For the first time in years, Sarah felt something she'd thought was lost forever: purpose. The concert hall lights dimmed as Sarah took a deep breath backstage. 6 months had passed since that life-changing night at the Golden Fork, 6 months of intensive practice, tears, breakthroughs, and healing. 5 minutes, the stage manager whispered. Sarah nodded, smoothing the fabric of her black concert dress, a gift from Dr. Wilson for tonight's performance. The program in her hand still seemed unreal. Sarah Mitchell, piano recital, printed in elegant font, with her mother's favorite compositions listed underneath. Her phone lit up with a message from Pate. "The entire restaurant staff is here. Front row, left side. We're all wearing Golden Fork pins." She smiled, typing back a quick thank you. So much had changed. She no longer carried trays of food, but instead spent her days at Westlake Conservatory, where Dr. Wilson pushed her abilities further than she thought possible. Another text arrived from Thompson. "Break a leg tonight. The scholarship committee is impressed with the applications already." The Thompson-Mitchell Scholarship Fund had received more attention than anyone expected. 20 young musicians from disadvantaged backgrounds would receive training next year because of it. Sarah peeked through the curtain at the packed auditorium. Her small apartment was gone now, replaced by a modest home with a proper piano in the living room. Her mother's photos sat atop it, watching over her practice sessions. The stage manager appeared again. "It's time." Sarah walked onto the stage, the spotlight momentarily blinding her. The audience applauded as she approached the gleaming grand piano. She sat, adjusted the bench, and looked out at the sea of faces. In the front row, she spotted the restaurant crew cheering wildly. Pete gave her a thumbs up. Beside them sat Dr. Wilson, elegant as always, with a rare smile. And there was Thompson, the demanding customer who had changed everything, now looking almost humble. Further back, she noticed faces she didn't recognize: young piano students clutching programs, professional musicians curious about the waitress-turned-pianist everyone was talking about, and regular people who had seen her viral video and wanted to witness her talent firsthand. Sarah placed her hands on the keys. No trembling this time, no hesitation. She began with Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece that had first made her mother cry with pride when Sarah mastered it at 14. As she played, memories no longer brought pain but inspiration. Each note felt like a conversation with her mother, continuing across time and space. The melody rose and fell, her fingers dancing across the keys with newfound confidence. Halfway through the program came the piece she played that night at the restaurant, Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor. The audience leaned forward, recognizing it from the video that had now been viewed millions of times. Sarah played with even more emotion than before, but now with technical precision that months of dedicated practice had restored. The thunderous applause that followed brought tears to her eyes. For her final piece, Sarah had chosen something special, the lullaby her mother had composed. She had expanded it into a full concert piece, weaving in themes that represented their journey together. "This last piece is called Coming Home," she told the audience, her voice steady. "It was originally written by my mother, and tonight I play it for her, and for everyone who helped me find my way back to music." As the last notes faded, the audience rose to their feet. The applause washed over her like a wave. Sarah stood, bowing deeply, then looked upward for a moment with a private smile. Backstage, after 3 encores, she found her dressing room filled with flowers. Among them sat a single envelope. Inside was a note in Dr. Wilson's handwriting. "Your mother would be proud. This is just the beginning." Sarah touched the necklace at her throat, her mother's pendant that she always wore for good luck. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. Outside, fans waited for autographs. Critics were already posting glowing reviews. Concert halls from 3 countries had sent invitations for future performances. But for Sarah, the greatest triumph wasn't the applause or opportunities. It was the music itself, finally reclaimed, no longer a source of pain, but a bridge to everything she had loved and lost. The waitress who had been forced to play piano had found her true voice again, leaving not just a room, but the world ready to listen.